You think winter is cold? Try living through a climate shift that lasted 2 million years, where the sea levels rose and fell like a breathing lung, and the landscape changed so fast that entire species were erased in a heartbeat. Want to know how we didn't just vanish into the permafrost? Keep watching. 300,000 years ago, the Earth was a violent, unstable playground. We tend to think of the Ice Age as a static, frozen block of time, but it was actually a chaotic pendulum. Massive ice sheets, miles thick, would crush landscapes, only to retreat and leave behind fertile plains. Our ancestors didn't live in a museum. They lived in a dynamic, unpredictable hellscape of shifting survival. Consider the geography of this forgotten world. During the height of the glacial cycles, the sea levels dropped so dramatically that places like Britain were not islands. They were connected to mainland Europe by a massive swampy plain. You could walk from London to Paris. But as the climate warmed, the seas rose, cutting off these populations. This isolation was the forge in which different human species were shaped. While our cousins in Europe were adapting to cold dealing with woolly mammoths and reindeer, our direct ancestors in Africa were facing a different challenge: water. It wasn't just about heat, it was about the rainfall. The expanding and contracting of rainforests and deserts forced our ancestors to be mobile, adaptable, and socially complex. You either learned to change, or you disappeared. Think about the mental toll of this unstable environment. Every generation had to pass down knowledge of where the water was, where the food moved, and how to survive the famine seasons. This wasn't just physical evolution. It was the birth of the predictive mind. We were learning to plan for the future, a trait that would eventually become the hallmark of Homo sapiens, separating us from every other creature. You think you're the ultimate human. If you met a Neanderthal in a dark alley, you'd realize quickly that you're the fragile one. They were built like linebackers, with brains larger than yours. Why did they vanish when they were clearly more fit for the environment? The answer will change how you see yourself. It is a myth that human evolution is a straight line like a ladder. It is actually a bush with many branches. 100,000 years ago, the Earth was teeming with diversity. You had the sturdy Neanderthals in Europe, the mysterious Denisovans in the Far East, the Dragon Man in China, and even the tiny, isolated hobbits of Flores. We were one of many experiments. Let's talk about the Neanderthals. These weren't the hunched-over brutes of old cartoons. They were sophisticated. They had laryngeal structures that likely allowed for speech. They buried their dead, and they crafted tools. They were perfectly adapted to the cold of Eurasia. With their broad, muscular torsos, they were thermal-efficient biological machines designed to retain heat in the harshest climates. Then there were the Denisovans. For a long time, we didn't even know they existed. They lived in the vast, harsh expanses of Asia, perhaps even in the tropics and high-altitude mountains. They were a distinct lineage, separate from us and the Neanderthals, living for hundreds of thousands of years, adapting to environments that would kill a modern human without modern tech. This diversity proves that nature loves a test. Evolution isn't about reaching perfection, it's about finding a niche. For 2 million years, the genus Homo experimented with different body types, different brain sizes, and different metabolic rates. We, the Homo sapiens, were just one of those experiments, and for a long time, we weren't even the most impressive one on the planet. If I told you everything you learned in high school about where humans came from might be wrong, would you believe me? We used to think we all marched out of Africa in a single, neat line. But new evidence suggests the truth is much more chaotic, and maybe it started in Asia. Are you ready to rewrite the map of your own history? For decades, the narrative was simple: out of Africa. We assumed the common ancestor of all these human types emerged in Africa and then spread out. But the ground is shifting. Recent fossil finds in China, like the million-year-old Yungshan skull, are throwing a massive wrench into our theories. It turns out our family tree might be rooted in Asia, not Africa. If the common ancestor was in Asia, it changes the entire migration story. It suggests that a population moved into Africa, evolved into us, and then we marched back out to meet our distant cousins who had stayed behind. This cyclical movement of populations makes human history less of a march and more of a tangled web. It makes us part of a global phenomenon. This also explains why the human traits are so varied. If you have different populations living in the Caucasus, Siberia, and southern Africa for 1 million years, they aren't going to look the same. They are going to diverge. They are going to solve the problem of how to be human in different ways. And that's exactly what the fossil record shows us. It forces us to ask, what defines a human? Is it the DNA? Is it the brain size? Or is it the ability to innovate? As we find more fossils, the lines between human and non-human blur. We are beginning to realize that the genus Homo is a diverse collection of adaptations, and we just happen to be the one branch that survived the pruning shears of time. You think you're 100% Homo sapiens. Check your DNA. You are carrying the genetic ghost of a Neanderthal right now. In fact, you're a hybrid. The story of human evolution isn't just about survival. It's a story of romance and integration. Do you want to know what our ancestors actually did when they met these other humans? The old biological rule was, different species cannot interbreed. Science has officially debunked this. We know now that when Homo sapiens encountered Neanderthals and Denisovans, they didn't just fight, they mixed. If you are of non-African descent, about 2% of your genome is Neanderthal. That's not a mistake, it's an inheritance. Why does this matter? Because that 2% gave us a massive advantage. Our ancestors had evolved in the warm, predictable climates of Africa. When they stepped into Europe, they were biologically unprepared for the pathogens there. By interbreeding with Neanderthals, who had lived there for hundreds of thousands of years, we stole their immune system upgrades. It was a biological shortcut. Instead of waiting 10,000 years for our immune systems to evolve to handle local viruses, we just inherited the solution. This genetic cheat code allowed our ancestors to thrive in environments where they should have died. We survived because we were willing to merge with the people who had already conquered those lands. And it gets wilder. In parts of Asia and Oceania, people carry up to 4% Denisovan DNA. This allowed for adaptations to high-altitude living, like in the Himalayas. We are quite literally a mosaic of the extinct humans that came before us. We didn't kill them off by replacing them completely. We absorbed them. We are their living, breathing legacy. If Neanderthals were stronger, smarter, and more adapted to the cold, why are we here and they aren't? Was it a war? No, it was something much more boring and much more deadly. Social capital. Want to know how a simple needle changed the history of the world? Keep watching. We often imagine our ancestors as violent warriors, but the evidence points to something different. It was an economic and social competition. Homo sapiens were socially sticky. While Neanderthals lived in small, isolated groups, perhaps to save resources, we built massive, complex networks. We were the masters of trade, communication, and cooperation. Consider the sewing needle. It sounds trivial, right? But the bone needle, which appears in the archaeological record around 40,000 years ago, was a game changer. It allowed us to make fitted, layered clothing. And the Neanderthal might wrap a hide around their shoulders. We stitched together insulated windproof gear. That kept our babies alive through the winter. Survival in the Ice Age wasn't about who could bench press the most weight. It was about infant mortality. If you can save 1% more babies per generation, you will eventually outnumber and outcompete your neighbors. We created better shelters, better insulation, and better support systems. We reduced the risks of the environment through technology. Our secret weapon was our ability to share information across vast distances. If a drought hit one area, we had trade networks to get resources from another. We had cultural buffering. We stored knowledge, maps, hunting techniques, plant lore, and passed it down. We were the first to treat knowledge as a shared resource, and that network made us unstoppable. History books love to talk about wars, but the greatest extinction in human history was quiet. No genocide, no massive armies clashing, just a slow, painful slide into oblivion for our cousins. Why did they really disappear? And could the same thing happen to us? Read on to find the terrifying answer. There is very little evidence of widespread systematic warfare between us and the Neanderthals. The truth is much more tragic. They were already on the decline. Climate change had shrunk their populations, reduced their genetic diversity, and left them vulnerable. When we arrived, we were simply better at extracting energy from the same environment. In 2012, in a freezing cave in the Altai Mountains, scientists found a small bone fragment. It was from a girl, just 13 years old. When they sequenced her DNA, they found something that stopped their hearts. Her mother was a Neanderthal, and her father was a Denisovan. She was a hybrid, a child of two different worlds living in the middle of a brutal ice age. She represents the human spirit. She was a child caught in the transition of history, living proof that our ancestors didn't see others as enemies to be eradicated, but as people. They shared fires, they shared lives, and they shared a future. Her existence reminds us that we are all deeply connected. The separation between species was always thinner than we thought. The lesson here is, clear cooperation is the ultimate evolutionary strategy. We survived not because we were the most violent, but because we were the most connected. If we stop cooperating and become too insular today, we lose the very thing that allowed us to conquer the planet. If we were the winners because of our social networks, what happens when those networks start to break down today?